Making sure you know you are being recorded these days. Holy buckets. All right, everybody get a handout? Perfect. Welcome, thanks for coming. Today we're talking about the economic model and the business plan. So if you were in, oh man, Greg's here. Uh-oh. Oh, I'm in trouble. Actually, I don't think he can ding me on anything in this class. I'm pretty pumped about that. Bye, Greg. So last week, we talked about the profit plan, picking your profit, determining how many units you need to create the life that you're looking at creating. So this is going to really dig into those numbers and build upon making sure that you have a plan for what those activities need to look like to make that profit and creating a business model around that. So some of this may be familiar to you, good review, good thing to always dig into a little bit deeper. Okay, why are goals so important? Anybody? So you know what you're working towards. Keep you focused. Motivated. Provides direction. Clarity and decision making. Personal satisfaction. Who loves crushing a goal? I do. Control over your future. Do you let things happen to you, or do you create what that's going to be? So our goal here is to make sure that we're turning those goals into action. So who's ever used the economic model worksheet in Bold before? That's where we're going to go through this. So this is the first sheet on Zoom. The first sheet in your handout is your economic worksheet. So I want you to fill this out as you go. If you don't know all of your numbers yet, you can go with some general numbers just to get a hang of it and come back to it when you have your own conversion rates and those kinds of things in order. Really just a good spot to start. I will say, if you took the class last week and you figured out your profit and what your units need to be that way, you can skip a couple steps in here in order to do that. So we could talk through that as well if anybody is at that point. So let's just dig right in. So that first section in the economic model is, what is the net income you want? Write that down. So for the example we have here, we're looking at $100,000 in net income. And so if we're running on what the MREA states to be a 40, 30, 30, so 30 expenses, 30 cost of sales, 40% is your net income. We're going to calculate that out to figure out what your gross income needs to look like. So literally you take 30% of your 100, 30% of your cost of sale for your cost of sales as well, which gives me a total of $160,000. Now, the one thing I want you to be careful in the way that this is set up is, are you making sure you're factoring your taxes in here? We haven't said the word taxes enough lately. Making sure that that is built into your number. So if your net income isn't quite factoring taxes yet, you may want to increase that to make sure that you are compensating for those things. So everybody,
what doesn't make sense?
Why?
Because 60% would be more than 100, right? So if you added the 30%, it'd be more than 100. Isn't it 40% of your gross, 30% of your gross? So, but those are 30% of 100.
So then you add them all together to equal your 160?
No. So like your net income should be 40% of your gross dollar, correct?
Sure.
So 40% of the gross dollar would mean that you are at 250,000, not 160. Right? If you take 100 and divide it by 4.4.
Yeah, what you have shown on there, you're showing 30% of your net income for expenses and cost of sales, as opposed to
doing it
30%
backwards.
Gross income, yeah, and then you're showing 100.
Sure. So let's go back and work it together. Okay. Then walk me through it. So
if you want 100, 40% of 100, so you take 100,000 and then divide it by 0.4. It's going to tell you what it's 40% of, which would be 250,000. So that's 250,000 of gross. That tells you gross income.
Yep.
And then take 30% of that gross income. And that'll give you that.
which is 75 each.
Best way to teach is to learn is to teach, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Better? Does that make sense what they just explained to us? So we're all learning together here. Follow that? So 40%, so you're dividing by that 0.4 to figure out what your gross income is. Work it backwards. So this would be your A. So we're gonna run on these next ones that my A is still gonna be the 160 I had, so that we don't spend all of our time just fixing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll just adjust the net, right? Or no, just the net would be different than 100 for that.
Yeah.
number.
Sure. Okay, so did everybody follow when you're doing your own worksheet, how to calculate that? So you divide what you want your net income, divide that by 40%. That's gonna give you your A, and then you can figure out your remainder. And you split that between your expenses and costs of sales. Now, keep in mind, these percentages are what we expect a good business. You may be running leaner than this. If you're running higher than this, I would recommend that you look at what are those percentages gonna look like. And where can you be maybe cutting so that you're not having such a high expense rate. Okay, so let's look at, we're going with, in this instance now, we're still gonna go with a gross of 160. Your numbers are gonna be different. So what percentage of your business is sellers? Anybody? No?
Right now it's 65%.
Yours is 65%, so you're gonna put 65 in that B line. You don't know yet, or maybe you're just getting started out, I recommend going with a 50-50. Just to make that easy. That's generally where people will land until you create a business plan that intentionally pushes you in one direction or the other. Obviously, the higher the percentage of sellers can be, the better in terms of efficiency in your business, of course, as we speak to often. So you take that 50% times A, so whatever your gross income was on that last page. So if my gross income was still 160,000 there, then your gross income from sellers needs to be 80,000 because I'm taking that 50% times my gross income. Now factor what your average commission is. So if you're typically around 6% commission, your average would be 3.3 on your side of things. And now you're going to divide so that 80, in this instance, 80,000 divided by 3.3% is going to give me roughly a sales volume of 2.4. Good. Now look at your average sales price. The Market Center right now is running about a 320, I think it was 324,000 this last month. We typically are running between 3 and 350. I went a little lower on that number just to be safe. If you don't know your average sales price, I would say somewhere around a 250 to a 300 is probably a pretty standard for this area specifically. So now you're going to take E, so your volume here, divided by your average sales price is going to get you the number of listings that you need to sell in order to reach your income goal for your sellers.
For the sheet that you like do with people, what do you call that? Do you remember?
Which line?
The one that like we've worked.
Yeah, that you've worked, yep.
Yeah, what do we call that? I'm just trying to pull it up to look at like.
For the total listings sold?
Because we put in my average in there.
Oh, your average sales price?
Mm-hmm.
You should have average sales price on there.
I know, I'm trying to remember the name of the spreadsheet.
Oh, what your actual spreadsheet is?
Yeah,
It would be goal tracking dashboard.
okay.
Yes, because it's all gonna roll together, right? Okay, so your total listings sold. This means the checks that come in to the office, right? These are closings. So then you want to look at what's your conversion rate. So once you have a listing under contract, what percentage of those actually sell? And we would think in this market, well, everything's selling, right? Well, we could be going into a shift. Your sellers' lives may change. Things may fall apart, right? So you do still want to have a cushion in there. You know, we see an average around, and work generally these numbers around 75%. I increased it in this instance to 80%, just to be able to give that ability that if they sign a contract with you, there's a little bit of room in case they don't all close.
So for like the calculator though, when we do this,
Mhm.
we take 80,000 and then divide by 0.033, correct?
0.033 to get a percentage, yes. Or if you have a fancy calculator like Emily's, she can hit the percent button and it turns it into it. You don't have to move the decimal on your own.
Yes.
Not old school.
I'm just not as wealthy as you guys yet, obviously.
I think it's on her phone and she doesn't even have an Apple phone.
Yeah.
I know, especially though it's Androids apparently have a fancy calculator than Apple
It
phones.
helps. I do this every single day.
Can't believe it.
You guys, I'm learning so many things today. Seriously, there's a percent button. Crazy. Apparently we also have those. We just haven't
Slave labor over here.
paid much attention. Okay, so then you're gonna take your 8, you're gonna divide, so your G, however many total listings sold you needed, divide that by your percentage of your conversion rate to sold. So listing signed to listing sold. We're working a little bit backwards here. It'll all make sense when we get there. So when I do that, mine rounds up to about 10. So I would need, in this instance, I would need to get 10 listings under contract in order to meet my goals. Now move that back a level. What's the conversion ratio when you go on listing appointments to actually signing a contract? Does anybody know what their conversion ratio is there? About 60? Yeah, so be careful, with those numbers, whereas I'm giving myself a really great high conversion ratio here at 75%. And I think a lot of that can lead to your lead sources, right? I mean, I think we were in a mastermind last month and Sherry, we were talking about conversion ratio and Sherry's like, well, I just don't have competition. So then I don't lose. And I'm like, well, I suppose if you're only going to your sphere and you never have to, go up against another agent, your conversion ratio is going to be a little higher. So be prepared for that number. And the same concept here is you're going to take your I, your total listings that you had to put under contract, divide that by your percentage of your conversion ratio on your listing appointments. It's going to show you how many listing appointments you need to go on. Give you a minute there to get through this part. Because if anybody's done this in bold, they go through it so fast that I can't keep track. Are we at a good spot? Did you guys finish that section? A minute?
Yeah.
Good? Good? Good?
It always just shocking to me how high the number gets after conversion.
After, right. And I think that's
Mostly
the part we
because I
have to be,
Well, I always estimate lower than the reality is.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, this
it's
is
more
appointments.
that's sold.
well, and you'd rather, know that on the front end, right? Than after the fact. And that's the big thing about tracking your numbers is that we can set up these business plans. And if you don't track what you're actually doing and you go off of an average, it can swing in one direction or the other. So making sure that you're watching your own numbers as we do this is really important. Okay, are we ready for section 3? Okay, so buyer listings, very same process here. So percentages, 50%. Here I was using a 50-50 split. You obviously can switch to a 65-35 if that's the way that you're headed. And I will say too, if you're currently running a 50-50 and you want that to be increasing, leaning more towards sellers in this next year, work this plan this way, because then you're going to create your actions around it in order to do that. So same idea here. I'm taking that A, for me, this was 160,000, that A on the top of the page times my percent of buyers, 50% gets us back to that 80,000. Now, obviously, on average commission rate, I'm going to run it what we typically see in the market at 2.7. If you do this at a premium, certainly factor that in. If you are somebody who, maybe you cover BACs for certain clients, make sure you're factoring that in too, of what that percentage looks like, or somehow factoring that into your number, that maybe your gross income needs to go up by X because you you give your military, first responders a discount there too.
I would say even just with, like I started doing more new construction.
Yep.
And new construction's really low.
Yep.
They'll have on a $450,000 bill, they'll do 8,000.
Right.
So, that's
Your percentage may go down.
1.7.
Right.
Or Lennar, Pulte, they're doing like 2.2 of the base.
Yep.
So,
So if you're looking at more new construction, that percentage is definitely your average sales price may go up a little bit.
Yeah.
To help compensate for the total amount of money that's earned, maybe. at that 8,000, maybe not.
No, it's a flat, some of them are
Yeah, flat,
Yeah.
right.
So I just moved mine only down 1/10%.
Sure.
Because I don't do a ton, but I know
Yeah.
there's gonna be a couple in there.
Yep, and that is a market center.
2.5 every once in a while.
Okay,
There's a lot of agents who are buying listings doing like 5%. And they do
Yep.
5 each.
for sure. And does everybody know how to look up their multi-year trends? In my KW. So if you've been in the business for a year, you can look, well, even the last couple months if you really want to, just obviously more data is helpful. You can look back at what that is in there, your average percent of commission. And that pulls straight from what Emily and I are processing on commissions, so that you do know what that number looks like for you, because it can certainly vary. And obviously, for the most part, with buyers, you don't have as much control over that percentage as you do in your listing presentation. Okay, so I took that 80,000, I divided it by my 2.7, that gives me about 2.9 million in volume for sold volume there. And then average sales price, I went easy at a 300,000. And now I'm going to take that 2.9 million, divide that by the 300,000, which is going to bring me to 10 buyers that I need to close, right? And then look at your conversion ratio there. So once you get a buyer under contract, what percent of those buyers are actually going to buy a house? Does anybody know what their conversion ratio is? I feel like buyers are a lot harder to figure out your conversion ratios. Do you know your conversion ratio on your buyers under contract to sold?
You could find it.
So I went with an average of 70. I mean, I think it's gonna be a little bit lower on your buyers than it will be your sellers. And so if we take that 10, in this instance, 10 divided by 70, when I round up, I think mine was like 14.3, something along those lines. That got me to 15 total buyers. And then same concept goes, how many buyer appointments does it take you to get your buyers under contract? And what's your conversion ratio there? I set that at 70 with total buyer appointments then that I would need in this instance to be 22. I'll give you time to work through that. Josh, how many buyer appointments do you need to go on this next year?
I don't know, think about it. 31
31 buyer appointments.
appointments.
Not so bad. Is that scary?
The 55 listing appointments.
55 listing
Right.
appointments was a little scarier than the 31 buyer
The
appointments.
86 appointments. So like
86.
literally, like, I guess it's really one sell and buy appointment a week. Every other week, and then like one listing appointment.
Yeah.
Is kind of what it breaks down to.
Does that sound doable? Like when you really break it down to that point, does that sound doable?
Yeah, but at that point, then my cost of sales is not gonna be 150,000. So I probably would want more leverage, right? Because
Sure.
assistants are under expenses. Am I right?
Yep.
Cost of sale would be buyer's agent.
Cost of sales would be like your market center cap, things that you only have when a closing occurs.
Right, but
So your
also like
assistant-
splits, team splits. right?
Team
If I had a-
splits, yep, team splits would go under cost of
So-
sales. Any, let's say you have your assistant has a closing, a bonus based on closings,
That'd be a
that would
cost.
go under cost of sale versus their salary that they're gonna get regardless of how productive you are.
Like frankly, I don't think I need to make, so just being transparent,
Yeah.
the numbers, I want a net 200.
Yep,
I don't think, I'm probably just doing this too simply. Said how much my net was. Oh, it does.
I made a spreadsheet that shows you what your net income is, weird.
So it seems like 56. But I know there's leverage and scaling and stuff.
Yep.
It just seems like to make 200 is 56 closings, mostly because there's such a high cost of sale, but to make 106, it's 20.
So your cost of sale percentage could be a little high.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm gonna do it without a buyer's agent, then I wish there's a model that's like, you might kill yourself. But do it without leverage, like it's 10% because you're gonna do bonuses and you can't.
Sure.
Like that, right? So if that's the case, then that would be 100,000 less.
Yep.
Which would be 10 less closings, 12 less closings, and that seems much more doable. Like
Yep.
I don't want to do 50.
Right.
But I guess I'm in my head, I don't imagine doing with the buyer's agent,
Okay,
but in truth, I would need to. So that's what I guess I'm wrestling is the model is to be in a team based on this.
with the 40-30.
The 40-30.
Yeah,
is a
30,
team,
30,
right?
40.
Not a solo agent.
Yeah, it's probably skewed a little bit, and that's where you can certainly work these numbers with a different percentage in that front end, right? Instead of it could be a 10, 20, 70,
Yeah.
right? Like ideally, it goes that direction versus it's a 60, 20, 20% profit, right? Like you want to have a minimum of 40% of your businesses.
Maybe I can
Profit.
reverse engineer the numbers, right? Because my assistant only has a max number of hours she can
Right,
work,
right.
So essentially that works out to be like 25,000 a year.
Exactly. Yep.
So if that's the case, then it need to be even 20% because 20% of 500,000 or 300,000 GCI,
Yep.
is still more than.
More than that. And that's where your extra leverage could come in though, too, right? Because what you have is under that percentage currently, right, of that 30%. And that gives you space for a buyer's agent for more admin if you're following the 30, 30, 40.
Right, I think where I'm kind of like, where I'm at right now is I'm realizing I think I need to either buy into this model more or just be more accepting of, okay, let's build out a model that is based on my history a little bit and then set my goals around it, because I don't know if I want to do 80-61.
Sure.
I know, like I've done 43, 45 closed in a year.
Yep.
And that was insanely busy year. I was on a team that had leverage. So
Right.
I guess it's even, I think I'm wrestling with really legally.
Sure. Well, and look at too, I mean, you talk about it. I think a good point here is what's the model to a T, and is the 30, 30, 40 truly the model? I would say no. It's a common best practice. Can you be better than that? I'll tell you right now, Carrie Schmitz doesn't run a 30, 30, 40. Her expenses are way lower than that.
Yeah, it's a huge expense.
It's right. That's a huge operating expense. So you can still run this model and change the 30, 30, 40 to different percentages and still run this in a way that's going to be useful for your business. I think the big point in this is don't ever let your net income be less than 40%.
Yeah.
So if your expenses and your cost of sales are going to be less than 30, that's awesome.
Right.
And Carrie will tell you hers.
This is
Are
the
less than
upper
that.
limit, Yeah.
Yeah, this is the
most
upper
expensive.
limit of be careful, right? And don't fall below this number. So you can still run this model and you just change those 30s to 20s or a 10 and a 20.
It's like a spreadsheet inside MRA, right? With
Mhm.
different
Yeah.
volumes you're gonna need.
Absolutely. And I have those, I think we gave some of those handouts out in the last class with the best practices that I can get for you too.
Cool. I've
So,
got MRAs everywhere. I've got one.
well, and sometimes trying to find the page in the book versus here's a handout that is sitting, we could
Yeah.
just put those models right up and be even that much more apparent. So any questions as we work this economic model? Does everybody have what their appointments would look like as you're working at first blush at least? Okay. So now we have your goals, right? What your activities should look like as an overarching. And now how do we put that into action? By creating a business plan. So what's the point of a business plan? It is an outline for your goals, because you look at this giant number of appointments you need to go on and go, holy crap, that's a lot. Yikes. Well, how do we break that down and give clarity to the exact activities that are needed in order to achieve your goals? And also removing the guessing from where your business is going to come from and what you need to do, because I can't imagine I'm the only person that sometimes sits at my desk and going, what am I supposed to do today? Am I the only one that has that problem?
Yeah, I don't know if that's right.
You don't know what, you never get distracted?
No, I always get distracted, but I never
Yeah.
I never go, what am I supposed to do next?
Well, sometimes I'll do it and then realize that there's a really important thing that I should be focusing on that's either not on my calendar, or maybe I didn't go look at my 411 first.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm
I thought
busy.
I'd be there. Oh,
I'm just kidding. Promise. Actually, I just make Emily do all my work. It's totally fine. So really you're removing the guessing from where your business is going to come from, right? You know, I feel like the kiss of death in real estate is to say, well, I just talk to everybody I know and that's how I'm going to get business. Well, okay. And how do you make that specific and something that you can do that you really get to control it versus, I don't know how many people I'm going to run into today in my sphere. So then creating really those items and activities where you can be held accountable or hold others accountable if you're building a team, right? Your GPS and your 411s should be revolving around you and anybody else that is a part of your business. So you have in here, the third page in your handout is the business plan template. A lot of this will be taking the high level things you just created in the worksheet. So like your total closed units, you already factored all of those things in. So this carries over the worksheet into something that you can literally put up in your workspace or have in your binder, whatever thing you look at, to make sure that you know those. So we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on that right now. The one thing I would just really recommend that you do dig into are what are going to be the top five business sources that you have. And if you get really good at tracking, what are the percentages of those? Does anybody know what percentage of their business comes from their sphere? Not enough of it. Do they hate you? That's
Perfect affirmation.
perfect affirmation. That's, yeah, let's put that in the world. The people that are supposed to know, like, and trust me, they just hate me. It's fine. So like on the team that I was leading, 50% of our business, of a 230 closing business, 50% of it was sphere of the team, like team members or of our rainmaker. So that's where our money should be going, right? Like we had an aha moment looking at it, like we're spending all of this money on internet leads and the Z word. And internet leads that nobody wants to admit they ever paid an arm and a leg for, as well as pay-per-click and all the other things as well too. But we were like, we spent all of that, and our sphere is 50% of our business. Like, where should we really be pouring our money into? Client events, 36 touch programs, those kinds of things versus these internet leads that seem kind of flashy. So really hone in on what your business sources are and making sure that your activities and your dollars are going towards those and not some other flashy thing that seems really exciting. And in here, your profit share, right? How many people can you add to your first level of your profit share in the next year? And setting a goal around that. And if that's something that is important to you and you have a goal around, obviously have a conversation with Beth around that, is how the Market Center can support you in those efforts. Okay, so the GPS. I don't even know if I want to admit this. I didn't know what GPS stood for until this year. And I've used this thing for the last 3 years. So GPS stands for, in case anybody else is in my boat, goals, priorities, and strategies.
I literally just assumed it was like not a real acronym.
Thank you. It wasn't just me.
Oh,
It's like a
global
GPS,
positioning
like-
system of your business.
Right. That's what I thought, like a navigator, a GPS. Well, no, it's actually an acronym. Okay, I feel so much better because I took the Maps Models class. We were both in that. And they're like, goals, priorities, strategy. I was like, holy cow, that makes tons of sense. And why this form makes even more sense now than it
So
did
the
before.
math model costs 198 page workbook
It did. It's all sitting on my desk right now.
sitting in. Okay.
Don't admit that.
No, is it? No, it's not. I got most of it from outside the truck. And actually, it's on the RMRA is in the back seat.
Okay, so your GPS, just like if we think about your GPS in your car, right? Helps you stay on path towards your long-term goals. And helps you cut through the noise and focus on what matters. That was my point earlier as to when I sit there trying to figure out what thing I should be doing. Getting away from shiny object syndrome, right? Like what's the core of your business that's gonna make you successful? And a lot of that, and assigning accountability, of course, too. And I think a big piece of cutting out that noise is you guys are busy. Like there's a lot of hours that go into real estate, and maximizing those hours to the things that are most important in your business is going to help create that work-life counterbalance, if you will, and getting to really hone in on all of that. And then allowing you to master the ability of thinking and acting in order of prayer, like who's read the one thing, right? This all falls into the mix there. So before we get into it, we're going to talk about how we set goals and set SMART goals. So what does SMART stand for?
Specific, measurable, attainable,
Realistic.
and time sensitive.
Yep, time-based. Guys, gold stars. We need to get gold stars around here. Emily, thought I gave you that job last time. I'm just kidding. Don't leave. I mean, I'm not. If you really want a gold star, I'll get you one after class.
All right.
So think about this when you're setting your goals. Make them SMART goals. They specific. Can you really hone in on what it actually is? Can you measure it? Generally, your measurement has a number attached to it. Let's be honest, is the easiest way to do that. Or something you can say, yes, I completed this, or I think it happened. So looking at, how many contacts you're making, right? How many appointments you set. If you're looking at, lead generation and social media, how many posts you put out, setting a number that X needs to be included in what those goals are. Is it attainable and realistic and relevant? I think these two things to me go very hand in hand. Growing your business is a huge important thing. Are you going to go from an income of 30,000 to $1 million in a year? If you got a game plan for it, great. And I would recommend that you shoot for something that is going to be a stretch goal, yet something that you have the system built out for and the ability to handle without burning out, right? Because I think one thing that can happen is people can set these really crazy high goals, and while they're reaching it, they try to burn out and they don't get there, or they don't have the systems in place to do it, or it feels like a giant flop, right? And that's really discouraging. So if you went from a year of 30,000 to a year of 80,000, your goal was to go from 30 to 150. That 8,000 is a huge accomplishment, yet you didn't come anywhere near this potentially unattainable or realistic goal that you could have set. So focusing on those and then making sure they're time-based. When is it going to be done? Done by the end of the week? Is it something that needs to be done by the end of the month? Setting a deadline to it so you can't procrastinate. Good. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways you can do a GPS template. The example I gave you in your handouts is from the One Thing book. It's like this. On the very top, you set your overall goal. So this would more than likely be, what's your gross income goal?
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. I muted you, Kathy, so if you wanted to speak, you can unmute. Oh, were you asking a question?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Oh.
I thought I was muted.
That's okay. You're good. I think I probably muted her and then she tried to mute herself and then yeah, my bad. Okay, so and that your goal for the year, that's gonna be your big goal. So either your profit or the overarching number of closings you want for the year, those kinds of things. And then you're gonna have 3 separate priorities that are gonna help you reach that goal. And a really important part of that piece, each of those priorities should be able to stand by itself. They should be able to accomplish something on its own. Priority 2 shouldn't be contingent on priority 1 happening. Does that make sense? So if you want X number of listing appointments, is priority 1, and X number of buyer appointments is priority 2. Those 2 things can happen on their own. It doesn't mean that if you don't get these listing appointments, this one can't happen. And you want them to be powerful enough that 3 priorities overarching are going to be what makes you hit your goals. Anybody have any examples of what a priority in their business is going to look like off the top of your head? Okay, so I gave you a couple examples that these could be, even some of them I heard, Nate had mentioned the other day, a priority for them is to have a certain number of pendings in place before, before getting even to the end of the year. That could be a priority that's going to help trickle affect everything there. So I would recommend these look at like these buckets of your listing appointments, your buyer appointments, or even the closings that are going to happen. So saying you're going to have X number of listings close or X number of buyers close would be that priority. And then what are the 5 strategies in order to get to each of those priorities? So I gave you 2 that maybe that's going to help with those strategies. The very back page of the handout is different lead generation sources. This is something that I personally had never seen it laid out in this until recently. So that very last page, I don't think a lot of it is super surprising, and putting all of these there, if you don't know what your main lead sources are or what you can be doing, this may help jog some of your ideas there. So 5 different strategies. We talked about how many buyer appointments do you need to go on a week? How many listing appointments do you need to go on a week? What type of lead source are you going to have? Are you going to, if you're really going to pour into your sphere as one of your priorities, or have X number of closings from your sphere, that's going to lead to that as a priority. How many client events are you going to do throughout the year? Or what is your 36 touch program going to look like in order to be able to build that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so priorities should really be, you're closed on each side, like 1 and 2, and then a third priority is something else you want to do, right?
Generally, that's how I've seen them done. The best is, each side, what you're going to close on, and then your third one, I would say probably the most common I've seen is X number of listings closed, X number of buyers closed, developing a strong sphere lead generation source. I think are like 3 pretty common strategies. Or your downline could be that third one if that's a big goal on your list. Or even like creating a farm, getting X number of closings from a farm. If that's a big source of your business, you could certainly put that as your third one there as well. Oh, sure.
Newspapers.
Depends on where you are.
Number 1 spot.
Depends on where you are. So here, so you've got, after you look at that one thing that has the worksheet there, you can see a GPS sample right after it. So this is, I believe, so with a goal, has 2020, so it's a little dated too. A goal closed of 122, like we said, listings, buyers, and then some sort of customer care that's going to help build the business and giving you some specific strategies. So when you look at all of these, they follow the SMART goals. They are, in this example, whoever built this that's an attainable goal for them, first of all. And they have where they are specific, measurable, they've got numbers on every single thing, attainable, realistic, and they're time-based. As you can see, there's due dates, and this one was built by a team, and who's responsible for it and by when. Does that make sense? Anybody want time to work on this now? Or jot some ideas as we go? Okay, so now after you make your GPS, this is really overarching for your business, then we lead into the 411. So 411, I feel like this is backwards. 1 year. Okay.
Yeah, 1 year, 1 month.
1 year, 1 month, 4 weeks. Oh, backwards. So this really helps you just dig that another level deeper, right? Like, how do you get clarity around your priorities for your year, your month, and your week? This falls really in line. If anybody's read the 12-week year, they're very similar concepts. So those 2 things are really interchangeable as you go. It also helps create counterbalance for your business and your personal life. As you'll see in the 411 template, there's business and there's personal, and putting those really side by side to see what that looks like throughout the year. And then also raises your level of personal accountability. As you probably heard Todd say, people who write down their goals are 50% more likely to hit those goals, and people who have an accountability partner are 75% more likely to do it. And so having this here and something that you can have and you can show to another person and share your 411 with them, and they share theirs with you, you're going to be able to be that much more accountable to running your business because it's right here. It's right in front of you. You can't just make up the thing you're going to do this week. It's got to really follow this plan that you have been developing from the beginning. And then allows you to achieve results. When you're really hyper-focused and looking at your goals, you're going to do it a lot quicker and probably maybe even underestimate what you're capable of. So here's the template. You have it here in your handout. So your annual goals are really going to drive off of what you've set your goals at in your 1-3-5. These are going to become very similar as you base your strategies on some of them, or some of your strategies are going to happen once a year, or they're going to happen once a quarter. Some of them monthly, and what those weekly goals look like. And so one thing that I think is really important for weekly goals and how to set those is making sure that you know what your one thing is. Like, what's the one thing I have to accomplish this week that if nothing else happens, at least that got done, and setting that up for yourself. And if you should earn the right to focus on anything else, is that set as number 2. So right in here, I mean, it's numbered 1-5. This isn't meaning come up with 5 things. Number 1 is the most important. That has to get accomplished and checked off the list before you get down to 5. And so I really encourage you to be real with yourself of what order those things can happen, because you don't want to fall into the pit. Well, number 1 is the easiest thing to do, or the thing that's the most fun to do. If it's not the most important, those things are not as relevant. And then making sure what can you do to accomplish those things. So if you have one goal for the week, what do you need to do? And what do you need to arrange in your schedule, or what kind of support do you need to make sure that happens? And if it is something that's vague, because sometimes in a week, it can be a little bit more hard to make it a SMART goal, but knowing how you're going to measure it, how you're going to accomplish that. You know, if it's spending more time with your family, let's say it's a personal goal. Well, how are you going to measure that? Are you going to say, I have to spend 3 hours with my kids on Tuesdays? Maybe. Or is there going to be something to know that you had that family dinner on Friday, and that's how we were able to accomplish that together? And then what's most likely to stop you? Be prepared for your roadblocks. You know, if you know that something's going to get in the way, what do you need to do to rearrange things or remove that obstacle, or set the goal so there's something that you can attain this week? Some weeks are going to be busier than other. We talk about, you know, not work-life balance not being a real thing, and work-life counterbalance being okay. And so if you're going on vacation next week, don't set a whole lot of business goals, right? Set maybe one important one that needs to get done, but enjoy that time and making sure that you can put those things in place, and then making sure when you do set a goal that you don't have obstacles in the way when you need to do it. And then I think the other thing too is always, as you're setting your goals for the week, review what you did last week. What was your goal? Did you do it? And what would you have done differently? So if you didn't do it, did that become this week's goal? Depending if time has passed or if it's something you can do now. And how are you going to do things differently so that it doesn't become a carryover goal from last week?
Leave this up for a second.
Absolutely. Thoughts on that? Or thoughts or challenges or successes you found when you create weekly goals?
That's how I was able to leave my career and jump into real estate full time, was creating that 3-month plan and then monthly, weekly, and daily actions.
What did you do to stick to them?
I
What
just literally wrote them down every single day. I rewrote, you know, my goal band for whatever reason. I mean, that just really keeps it in your head, even
Yep.
more than just reading them at the beginning.
So one thing I really love about if anybody's done the 12-week year is it's very gamified, right? So if you do it, you like get a score, right? So if I had 8 things I needed to accomplish this week, every time one of them was done, I hit 4 out of 8 or 5 out of 8 or 6 out of 8. And even in there, they'll talk about, you know, if you hit 75% of your goals achieved over they talk about 3 priorities, right? Just like we have here. That's a successful week, right? So it's not even that you have to hit every single one of them every single week. How do you build upon that and doing those kinds of things to make sure that it's in the forefront there? Got it? Okay. So really looking at next steps is to work these plans, setting your goals, creating the plans. I highly encourage you, if you don't have an accountability partner, find one. Find somebody that's going to stick with it with you. And I think the interesting thing, there's an accountability group that meets on Wednesday mornings. So we were talking about, well, everybody's got different businesses and their different business plans. Okay, great. I know your accountability partners aren't even in real estate, right?
Which
So-
are referral sources.
Great referral sources, genius. And they don't have to be, your goals don't have to be their goals. It's probably better that they're not, to be honest. You're just holding each other accountable to your goals and having another perspective of somebody say, yeah, you nailed it. Or here's how what are you going to do differently next time? As always, we're here for if you want to sit together and do a one-on-one consultation. I'm happy to go through business planning, goal setting. I know through our PC program, Beth, really anybody on our staff is happy to do that. And then Gene Rivers is hosting a business planning clinic nationally. So this will be via Zoom, October 20th and 21st, 2 half days back to back. If you've never gotten to see Gene Rivers present, I highly recommend it. He is just a wealth of knowledge. He's amazing.
Do we know if that's central time?
I do believe that is central time. Yeah, so we'll have it here. So
And it's like usually not too expensive for you.
$49. Yeah, so we still ask that even if you're going to join the Market Center watch party, you pay for your ticket. And if you want to sit in here, awesome. And I'm sure we'll come up with some food or something really exciting in the mix. Okay. Questions, thoughts, aha moments? Yeah.
I think the GPS, like I've done the 4-on-1 with my assistant, but I did not do GPS to build out the 4-on-1. Got to do that backwards for the role.
Yep.
One of the things I'm realizing is that we got 4-on-1 based on things that actually aren't going to make us money necessarily, or at least not high enough priority.
Sure.
So it's like, yes, we want our database flawless.
Yep.
But we do not want it at the expense of stopping lead generation.
Correct.
I can't do it with you 5 hours a day every day. So, and then, like another example would be, she creates a task for me to do that she should do.
Yep.
And sending work back. I'm learning as a leader.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
Learn as you go.
learning.
Absolutely. And I think when you look at that leverage piece, don't doubt people and what they're capable of, and even the little things that you don't realize. I think when Emily started in her role, one of the things in my position, my email, and I think your guys' email is probably the same too, is like drowned. Like I can spend hours in my email. And so my maps coach and I talked to him, I'm like, I don't get it. I spend 3 hours in email. She's like, stop doing that. And I'm like, well, how can I do that? And she's like, well, why can't Emily go through your email? And I was like, good point. Why can't Emily go through my email? We share an email, for God's sakes. Why can't she go through it? And so it's like, literally, we started where I'm like, okay, you touch the email for the first hour of the day. I don't get to see it. And we have a little thing of these are things she can take care of. And these are things that I have to take care of. And knowing what those roles are and realizing there's more that she can do that I was holding on to because I wanted control of it. And one of my biggest takeaways when we were at Mega Camp was you can have control or growth, but you can't have both. And that's where a lot of that piece goes in when you're really looking at your leverage. And I think another big point to this too, that, sometimes where you get pushback on going through all this is it seems like a lot of work to set goals, to make these plans, to do these worksheets, to do all those things. It is, and it's really important, right? Like, and on the front end, it's a lot of work. And how much more clarity is it going to give to your business and making you that much more productive in the long run? So while it's a little bit of work right now, when you do it right, it really just makes life that much easier.
Majority of successful businesses. Plan,
They business plan.
I started business planning in August for my previous.
Yep.
Last 3 months.
Yeah.
So,
You have right? Teams have retreats. Our now that we're not in a big transition in our leadership team, we'll have a retreat for the Market Center staff to say, okay, what are we going to do this next year? I mean, I think you do see that in a lot of businesses, and when you're treating this like a business and being that purposeful, it is going to be that much more successful. And you ask all of our top teams and top individual agents, and they're going to tell you they have some sort of, I would hope, some sort of process like this. Okay. Should we do a drawing? Can you grab me the bucket? So today we're drawing for the shift, because we have not announced yet, we are going to be doing a book club on the shift, and I'm really excited because we're going to have a few people from our ALC and other top agents in leadership leading the chapters of this. So if you don't already have this book, here's a chance to get a free one. And if you do have this one, you can share it, or I have other book options in my office if you really had your heart set on something else. Winner is, ooh, Tina, sneaking up the paper clip. Paper clip, got it.
It was the paper.
She got a paper clip. I was like, why is there a paper clip? Because she's got a cute little sticker. Do I get to keep it?
Yes, of course.
Do I get to keep it?
Everybody gets a sticker.
Yes. This is totally a teacher thing, isn't it? Everybody gets to see gold stars.
Kind of, sort of, yes.
Kind of, sort
Oh,
of.
thank you.
Shift book.
Yeah, people have been talking about it all week, so I'm super excited.
Look at
Thank
that,
you.
perfect
I
timing.
really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
Okay, well, I am around if anybody has any questions as you're working through this. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Here to help.